allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for attending tonight's planning board meeting. Please be aware of the fire exits. In the event of an emergency, please move in a calm and orderly fashion down the stairs, and please do not use the elevator. The meeting notes are taken by the secretary for the purpose of a record and minutes, so please identify yourself each time you come to the podium, and please speak into the microphone. The meeting minutes are not intended to be a verbatim record, but only to indicate the sum and substance of the proceedings. The meeting workshop is being recorded by our ICAT department and broadcast on Spectrum Channel 1303. We will follow the items in the order they appear on the agenda. There's extra copies of the agenda near the door. After the case has been called, the applicant and/or agent shall come to the podium to present their case. During this time, the planning board members will have the opportunity to question and comment on the case. For public hearing cases, the chairman will open the case for public input, in which anyone wishing to speak regarding the case will come to the podium, state your name and address, and direct their comments to the board. We do put a 5-minute limit on that. Once all public input has been received, the applicant and/or agent will be given the opportunity to respond to public input. Once all public input has been completed, the chairman will close the public input and the board will then move on to a decision. No further input is allowed at that point. Please call the first case on our agenda.
Our first case, public hearing case number PB 2024-03-02, request by Sign and Lighting Services LLC for signage approval for Citizens Bank on premises 525 Titus Avenue in a C business district.
Good evening, Devin Ely, architectural, or AGI, 2820 Crusader Circle, Virginia Beach, Virginia. I got it down to 30 pages. I said I got the sign package down to 30 pages for you. The revised package that submitted, thank you so much, Michelle, for getting that over to everyone, indicates all of the things that we discussed 2 weeks ago, bringing the LEDs down to 4,000 Kelvin for illumination 1 hour before to 2 hours after, illuminating the monument sign, also marking the setback 15 foot, both from the right and frontage from Hudson Street.
Any changes since the last?
No changes other than just marking up the additions that we discussed in the first meeting.
What did you decide to do as far as the monument sign is in?
Going with an internally illuminated. Thank you, Mr. Hooper.
You can find it on page 24 of your packet.
Thank you.
I just wanted for the public to understand what was different
yes, sir.
from the last one. Is that the only change you made?
That is the only change, yes.
And did you say that's the correct amount of space?
The setback is actually listed on page 2, where on the site plan, the full site plan, where we have it marked out as 15 foot.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board members?
First, I want to thank Michelle for getting all of this to us again. The west elevation sign, can somebody just tell me how that's lit?
Which west elevation sign?
The Citizen Bank sign.
The letters?
Yeah.
It's internally illuminated.
Okay.
We have decreased the brightness by using a lesser luminous LED. And that is throughout the sign package for all signage.
So the color that I'm looking at of the sign is black. I'm looking at page 11 of 30.
No, sir, that's actually Citizens Green.
Okay. Is it a dark?
It is a dark green, yes.
So the channel letters will just be glowing.
Correct.
It won't be, all right. I'm good with that. I'm also colorblind, and I apologize that I could not see green.
That explains things after all. No, anyways. So I noticed you have electrical access. It is recommended for electrician to put all exterior signage on a single circuit with a timer, 5 p.m. to 9 a.m., or photocell dawn to dusk. We discussed previously being illuminated
The
1 hour
decision-
before, 2 hours after.
Correct. It'll be 1 hour before opening to 2 hours after opening, or after closing. And that will actually not be on a timer or a photocell. It will be dictated by the BMS system, which the bank uses to manage multiple branches. So it will be specific timing, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. or 9 a.m. and then 5 p.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay. Would you call that a BM? What?
BMS,
And what does that stand for?
Building Management System.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Okay, any questions? Okay. At this point, I will open it up for public hearing. You can take a seat.
Thank you.
Anyone wishing to speak to this, please come forward. State your name and address. Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. We did receive some input. Would you like to review that for the record?
Sure. Are you referencing the HIP comments?
Correct.
So, Helping Arundequoit Plan for Progress, HIP, they submitted a letter dated June 20th of this year. They are stated that they are in support of the signage. However, I will note that in their letter, they are in support of an externally illuminated monument sign, and they are in favor of the standard timing of the lighting of 1 hour before and 2 hours after closing.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to respond to any of that?
As we discussed previously, the lighting of the monument sign falls into a little more flow with the plaza, with the other businesses, to have the monument sign internally illuminated versus externally illuminated.
And then the ATM area is going to be illuminated as per the regulations.
Correct.
Right, from New York State. Does the board have any questions on any of that? Okay. Based on that, you can have a seat.
Thank you very
I
much.
will. First off, is this a type 2?
Yes.
Okay. I will entertain a motion.
On PB 2024-03-2, that we accept the application as presented with the condition that the hours of illumination are 1 hour prior to opening and 2 hours after closing. You got more?
Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Dan. This is for signage approval. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. No abstain, and we have 2 absent. Take that back, 3 absent, right? It's approved, vote of 5 aye, 3 absent. We wish you much luck and success.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next case, please.
Next case is case number PB 2024-05-04. Request by McMahon LaRue Associates, acting as agent for 43 North Real Estate for subdivision and preliminary/final site plan approval to subdivide one existing 6.368 acre parcel into 2 lots regarding the proposed redevelopment of an existing building into 22 apartments and 6,000 square feet of commercial space on premises 4530 St. Paul Boulevard, aka 41 Colebrook Drive, in an R1 residential district. I'll also add that prior to the meeting, there was a comment that was submitted, a written comment, and copies were provided to you. So you've never seen them before, but they should be up at the dais.
Is that this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, everyone. Joel Barrett of Fairhaven Road in Rochester, New York. So we've kind of worked with you guys on a couple iterations of our plan and made some minor tweaks from our last, and actually provided all of our architectural floor plans as well as elevations. We made some additions to our site plan for banked parking at the recommendation of the board. We added some fenestration on the the east side of the parcel to obscure traffic lights from the two-way traffic going in our Colebrook egress. We identified some areas for parking. We removed our dumpster enclosure in favor of toters to make our sight line. We actually reduced the number of residential units count to 20, just because of some cost considerations associated, and then also just preference from those over 100 people on our waiting list for spaces there, Irondequoit residents that wanted slightly larger apartments than some of the smaller ones that we had initially proposed. So we do have 20 units with a slightly smaller second-story addition. We've identified some banked parking areas. We took into account peak mass ceremonies from 2023 as to determine our parking counts based on bulletins that were published by the Latin Mass community in order to do that, and we do have ample parking. We did initially reflect our table on the as-is condition site plan to show that how many parking spaces were for the site when it was initially approved, and then we revised that, and we're showing the number of parking spaces required for peak population in use of the church, which provides ample parking, and then also our smaller parking requirement for our space. The 20 apartments, it's all a market rate project. We will be using historic tax credits and placing the building on the National Historic Register and following National Park Service requirements and State Historic Preservation Office. So our goal was to be able to preserve the existing structure because we find these buildings beautiful. A lot of the brick and a lot of the details of it, some of the architecture on the inside. And then we're working off of the use variance that was approved by the town of Irondequoit, that was also upheld by the state Supreme Court recently. I imagine, given their attorney is in-house tonight, that they may appeal that decision. I don't know the answer to that. We have not seen an appeal, and I think they have a few more days left to do it, but that is a possibility. But as of now, the state Supreme Court did uphold the decision that the town of Irondequoit made to grant that use variance. On the site plan, we did add some landscaping, some fences, as I mentioned. We have an idea of our mechanicals, so our HVAC systems will be using an air-sourced heat pump with condensers on the rooftop. We did not include the sightline survey, but we had provided it in the past, so it'd be very difficult from any of the public space to see any of the units that were on the roof. They're also an extremely quiet unit, and they run at various times. So even at peak, it's maybe 200 CMs. I don't have the data in front of me right now, but it is a quiet system that won't be heard by the neighborhood and won't be seen by anyone passing by. We do have 6,000 square feet of commercial space, and we have been working, we've shown 2 different daycare facilities, that space. So we would like to put a daycare because we think it fits in the character of the neighborhood. We also recognize that this area of Irondequoit will soon become a childcare desert, and that's also a big issue in many municipalities is enough and adequate childcare. And with a lot of the young families that are moving into Arundequoit, that's something that's important to us. And that's seems like it would be a viable commercial use within the community and with the proximity to Iroquois School. I don't think at this time we're requesting any variances for our project, so outside of just utilizing the use variance that we were granted, and then with our second-story addition being within, on the rear of the building and not really on the front of the building, and then historic preservation standards, we think this is going to be an awesome use for this site. We know the majority of the town and population, just from all of the data collection that we've done previous to this, are in support of it. And if we had 100 units there, I would imagine that we would fill them very quickly. Apartments will be a mix of 1, 2, 3-bedroom apartments. We will be utilizing the lower level, and that leaves that 6,000 square feet of commercial space, which I was told is ideal for a potential childcare population of 100 to 150 students. I understand that for every one student, they need 35 square feet according to whatever code they're required to comply with. So we have some interested parties there, and that's very important to us to be able to provide that to the town of Arundequoit as well. And definitely just get the building back in use. It's been obviously vacant since 2014, 2013. No real buyers for it to use as a school, which we kind of proved during our use variance. But we wanted to go through without any need of any variances, so we could kind of expedite this plan and definitely look to get in there before the building further deteriorates. Because each kind of day it passes and year it passes, it gets in worse condition. So I know that we'll be preserving the existing windows. All the exterior wood features of the building will be preserved, likely moving the storm windows inside. So you see that original window, the wood window, is very important to us in those details. Restoring the columns, restoring the masonry on the building. So we have a pretty large project planned in terms of construction investment. I'd imagine that the total project will be in excess of $5 million of construction and probably closer to $7 million of hard and soft costs combined. Unfortunately, we'll have to spend a decent amount on interest rates or on construction interest, but that's just now then we're low interest rates on the construction side. So that'll be a decent couple $100,000 of our project that I wish I could put towards something else as opposed to pay to the banks, but that is what it is. We are proposing a private deck on the outside. We will put some seating on the west side of the parcel for residential tenants. We're reserving the east side of the exterior parcel to the extent that a playground is required for a daycare facility. But outside of kind of shoring up the existing landscaping, there isn't really a lot of exterior work done to the existing building. We're not demolishing any of the structure. We are kind of utilizing the same hallways, so kind of from the outside, it'll still have that look and feel of a school, which is part of the intent of placing on the National Historic Register and following state historic preservation guidelines. We'll have some tenant storage in the building, but that will not be third-party storage. It'll be only for the residents of the building. We'll also have a fitness area, but that will not be for third-party fitness. It's just for the tenants. We will be adding an elevator to the interior of the building, so you won't really be able to tell it's there, but it will service all floors as well as make the lower level ADA accessible. Currently, there's only a lift between floors, the grade level and the first floor. So it just makes our building more accessible as well with this use change. All of our apartments, I don't know how much you've seen of some of our former work or our prior work, but we use hardwood floors, nice natural materials, solid surface countertops, stainless steel appliances. A lot of these places are going to look like, brand new, kind of really higher end design. So it's a lot of times people ask me the question, they say, oh, couldn't you just make it less expensive or do it cheaper? And we're sort of like, well, by trade, we're boutique custom home builders. So we don't even have those type of suppliers to go in and put laminate countertops on or, laminate floors. So we just don't, that's not in the DNA of our company. So we really think we're creating a product that will last, give this building another 100 years.
Can I just ask a question, or,
Can I start?
yeah, go ahead.
Could you explain what your schedule looks like, how long this project's going to take?
Yeah, so right now we're probably in a 14-month construction schedule. I would still say that, if we granted the approval tonight, assuming there's not an appeal to this Article 78, which I don't know the answer to that, if there is, I'd say that would put it out 6 months. But from this appeal, we probably have 3 months to finalize construction drawings, and then another month or two to finalize a closing with the bank and an acquisition. So we would buy the property at the same time we have our construction loan approved. But a couple months to finalize the architectural drawings and structural engineering drawings for this, and then probably another month of internal reviews with the town of Arundequoit to get our permit reviewed back and forth, various designs, electrical engineering plan, mechanical engineering plan, sprinkler design plan, which we will be sprinklering the entire building. That's what I failed to mention that. So it would be a 14 to 16-month construction project. So realistically, from today, we would be done in 24 months, ready for occupancy. But we would be able to start the project with this approval to stabilize the building or, stop some of the blight that's happening at the site.
Just from a little bit of background, have you done similar projects with similar type buildings?
Yeah, never actually a school, but we've renovated. We turned a city hall into apartments. We turned a factory into apartments. We turned a late 1800s mansion into residential units. So we're consistently doing projects that involve historic tax credits, projects that involve adaptive reuse. And I would say, in terms of our organization and who we are as a company, we generally get into projects that this would be too small for a bigger developer to want to deal with the complexities, use variance, historic approvals, municipal approvals. So it's a very small project to do something this complicated. But then if it was a smaller developer trying to do that, they probably wouldn't want to go through all the administration and paperwork that we've gone through to get to this point. So I guess our company doesn't mind the paperwork, and we're used to kind of taking our time to do things right. So someone of our size may not be able to take on as paperwork heavy or legally heavy project as this, but then the bigger companies that could do that, probably why the building sat around, they wouldn't want to deal with it for 20 apartments at the end of the day. They'd want to focus on 100 apartments, 200 apartments. So we're kind of in this little niche that allows us to do smaller projects. We self-perform the construction. We're the first ones on the site, and our company is the last one to leave the site, so we're the last hands touching it, doing all the finished carpentry and punch out. So, it's not that we're just going to ship this off for somebody that, we don't know we're going to be there every day with our company. So we're very hands-on in that process. I may even do a little bit of demo, but don't hold me to that here because I can't promise
Okay.
that. It's been a little while.
Sure. Ellen, go ahead if you have questions.
I've got a couple questions. We're doing site plan review as well as the subdivision, right?
Yes.
In the interest of seeker, I would imagine. The landscaping plan here, this is it. I'm looking at 3 of 5.
Excuse me? 3 of 5?
Landscaping plan.
Well, I know we
Just
placed
a
it
couple
on the
chestnut
site
trees,
plan.
apple trees, and a rain garden.
Yeah, I mean, we're predominantly just cleaning up and utilizing the existing site. We're not really going into really any physical site plan work to tear the site up other than reusing
So you're not going to do anything to the Colebrook side of the building?
Is that the west or the east? I'm sorry. Oh, the Colebrook side, the front of it. I mean, I hadn't put too much on the plan because there is decent grasses there and green space, but I mean, we are going to do a couple bushes up towards the front to obscure potentially the commercial area, but there is some trees in there that may not be showing through on the existing plan. These are just our additions, so it does look okay now, other than the weeds being there and, things like that are from not being maintained. But I think once we get that front of the building cleaned up, we get those columns done, we get a new color on the windows, the front of the building is going to be nice and clean, and I wanted to actually make it as unobtrusive as possible to the neighborhood and not look like they're walking by a totally different building. I want it to act like it's been there since it has, 1923. So
Then, did we ever decide on how this hallway is, the connection to the church on the south side? Or, I'm sorry, the west side of the property?
Yeah, so in our contract, we do have a right to use an access door there. So it will be devised at that access door. And then part of an agreement that we have sent to the diocese, but they wanted to wait to finalize for approval, would be to have a maintenance agreement associated with that. So I think that we talked about during the sketch plan meeting that there could be some conditions that are required. So it would be our maintenance agreement for the shared egress, the maintenance agreement associated with the access to this doorway. But we will be able to use that doorway, and there will be a demising wall inside there.
And do we have the parking agreement drafted yet for the church?
Well, we have,
I'm
we
doing
have
a
the shared
subdivision
parking
here,
agreement.
so that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, we haven't finalized it. I have sent it to the diocese for their review. We've identified an area, we have discussed it, but it was going to be something that would be a condition as part of this. But it has been discussed and agreed to, at least verbally, but we haven't made any move on it because of the lawsuit being recently settled.
And do we have samples of like what the windows are going to look like, what the doors, front doors are going to look like, all of that stuff yet?
Well, we're keeping all the existing windows, so, I mean, we can do a little bit of material selection on the addition if you want to see something like that.
That would be helpful, I mean.
we
it would
can do
be-
that.
I'm approving these, right? Or should I just leave it up to you?
Well, no, I think it's fair that you would be able to determine the materials, but in terms of our
Okay.
SHPO review on the historic side, windows, doors, all of that existing has to be maintained,
And
so,
you're working with SHPO?
yes.
Okay. Have you worked with the Landmark Society?
Yeah, quite a
Okay.
bit. Not specifically on this project, but we have worked with them extensively on other
Are
projects.
you going to,
Chris Brandt is the one working on our application, so,
So
Yeah.
the windows and doors are all staying the same, so it's not necessarily necessary to get samples because they're,
are you going to be painting them though?
yeah.
They're not
I'd
going to stay
imagine
the way
they're-
they are now.
Yeah, well, they will get restored by, there's historic restoration standards, so whether we pull all of them, whether we have a requirement to make
Right.
some of them operable with fresh air, but the actual number of lights on them, the wood, elements of them, all of that will stay identical as with the doors. There will be paint placed on them.
And I know you said that the air conditioners are really, really quiet, and I appreciate that, and I know the neighbors will too, but I'd like to see a decibel reading on the printout from the company.
Definitely submitted that, like at a very early meeting when we had subdivision, we set our because we did mechanically engineer the building, so that's how I know how many number and spacing of those, so we submitted it. I don't know if it came in this package because we've been, I think in the first one it was definitely there. I don't know, not with this recent submittal, but we did, and that's where the 230 CFM is coming in my mind, and then I did it specifically talk with mechanical engineer. He said, they don't all run at once. So even if you had 25, 30% running at a time, you're still at a decibel volume.
Bet on
that is-
last Saturday, they would all be running at once.
Yeah, possibly. But even if they're running all at once, they're all not running at exactly the same time. So even if 50% were running, and I can pull up the note on that. Let's see. But we did have a full mechanical engineering plan submitted at one time, or at least concept plan on this.
And is there any area for tenants to use?
Yeah, so on the west side of the property, kind of where you're seeing this bump out between that door that's on the breezeway, there will be some tenant seating area, but it'll just be furniture-type pieces on the outside. But,
Is that noted on this, on 3 of 5?
I don't know if that's what this space is. There's a little arrow on it. It shows like a small, it talks about the aluminum fencing, it talks about boxwood shrubs, and then you see this like small platform, there's an arrow, but I don't see it actually called out. I don't know if it didn't make this plan, but that would be a seating area with benches. But you can see like the small pad that's going to be there.
Yeah, with something that looks like ottomans or something.
Yeah, so it'd be more furniture pieces and not a permanent fixture.
But what's it going to go into? Is it going on a patio?
I'm actually thinking that that's fairly flat and might be more like, not quite a picnic bench, but something that can sit on the grass area, but I don't know the answer to that right now.
So a picnic bench is what you're going to provide for the tenants?
Yeah, just a few. Let me just look at the mechanical plans, because I do have them.
I'm done for right now, Bernie.
Anybody else have questions?
I do have a question on
Yeah,
this.
yes.
What does this part mean, where with the asterisks, where it says the extended E-lift and it says will require exterior addition, may require?
So there currently is a lift that takes you from grade to the first floor, and I think that maybe that's a holdover from one of the plans, but we don't intend to reuse that space. There is a framed out area, a small bump out on that side, but we're gonna put a lift on the opposite side of the building and not reuse that.
So that on this first page here doesn't mean anything?
What does it say about? It says former lift, will require exterior addition, may require grade lobby addition. I think it just says former lift, so I actually don't think that, I think that maybe they're making ADA notes that currently to get into the lobby space, you're slightly above grade. It's probably a 6-inch step up, so I don't know if they're referring to this as an ADA note, but we would have ADA accessibility through the breezeway door, and then we're putting a lift that reaches all floors on the opposite side. So this where it says former lift, we're actually marking it down that we would utilize that as storage for the building, probably exterior storage.
And what's the deck rail looking like on the top of the building?
Well, we've previously done metal rails, so I would imagine that we'd do something similar, like a welded metal railing. I can show you a picture from a past project if necessary. I didn't know how much, and I...
Picture from this project? What you're going to be doing?
Yeah, I can, well, it would be similar to our past project, so I would mirror that.
Yeah, that would, whatever it is
We
that
did
you
talk to our
want to use here
architect.
is what I should be seeing, right?
Okay. Yeah, we spoke with our architect. I was asking some of the same questions, because I'm like, well, aren't they going to need to know the material types of our addition, some of these things? And I don't know if he just didn't get to that, but we did talk about that. So I'm happy to come back with material selections for the addition, or...
Yeah, I'm wondering what the exterior cladding on the third floor addition is gonna be.
We discussed this a little bit. Do you guys? Yeah, I think that we talked about a mix of, there's some EFS, some cedar features, some hardy board.
Podium, please.
Somebody, yeah, you've got to go up.
Need to come to the podium, state your name, address, and
Lily Lovelace of South Fitzhugh Street in Rochester. We did speak about this. Obviously, our exterior materials are going to be similar to the ones that are existing. Interior materials, it's difficult to say because with our SHPO approvals, we won't be able to make those decisions until we go through at least a part one of our approvals with flooring considerations, et cetera.
So I think it's fair that we'd come back to the board with our addition materials. So we can do all the exterior materials and provide a list of what we propose as part of an approval.
But we are also happy to provide across our projects, we typically use the same materials across all of them. I'd be happy to provide some cabinetry samples as well as flooring that we've used in past projects,
Take care more
color
about the
palettes.
exterior.
And exterior, the addition, the windows, we're gonna do our best to match the existing windows on the existing building. Materials would be just a standard EFS for siding.
Yeah, I'm just asking about colors, I guess.
Colors?
On that. And the materials, I know that we're going to be really happy to see any of those, just
Yeah.
so the neighbors know what to expect also, right?
Certainly. We did provide a rendering again in one of the first rounds of the exterior of the building. I believe on the rendering we had, was it like a deeper?
It was a maroon
It was a
paint color.
maroon paint color, which actually paired really nicely with
That color
the
brick.
brick facade. I can re-provide that. But again, open to suggestions if that's going to carry weight.
I mean, I think that we'd be happy to follow SHPO's lead in this department. Generally, when you're dealing with additions on a historic building, they often ask for it to contrast
Yeah.
with the existing building, so it's clear that it was not part of the original structure, which that really
Exactly.
opens up a realm of possibilities. So, I mean, personally speaking, if SHPO was okay with what you
Yeah.
picked, then I think that would be fine. But I think that for clarity on our plans, we got to have what that is listed, so that when the inspector comes and
Certainly.
Yeah, we don't want to bait and switch with like vinyl siding or something like that. I'm happy to propose a very high quality material. And we did have this discussion. I said, aren't they going to want to know? And then they said, and I was like, is there an architectural review board? Is that done by the planning board? So I was like inquisitive about it. I said, every other board that I've gone to wants to know what it's going to look like. So I totally can respect that. And I'm not prepared to
appreciate it.
like discuss them, and I don't want to say the wrong thing. So I'm happy to come back with like tight material selections. And we did send the MEP plans. I did look at the email that was sent to Michelle on this in terms of it making this package. And we did talk about noise because I know that was one of the comments on our early surveys. Is it going to be loud? I even read the planning board comments from when they attempted to rezone, 5-6 years ago or whatever. And that was the noise of the air conditioners is going to be a big deal. But these high efficiency heat pumps, not as loud. So,
They're just up
yeah,
high, and there's nothing to really
Of course.
right.
stop them. I appreciate that. I know that Michelle has given us lots of materials on this, and I'm happy to go back through with what I've saved to take a look, but it would be nice to have it all together in one
course.
plan so we know.
Yeah, I have no problem with that at all.
I mean, we're just here to
I've been
help
asking
you.
this-
And
I was
can tell-
asking similar
I agree
questions.
with Brad on the SHPO part
Yeah.
of it. I mean, they're gonna give you some great ideas, but it'd be great to see that come back.
Yeah, and we have started the discussion with them, so it's not that, some of this design did incorporate that because we're working with Chris Brandt very closely on it. He's our SHPO person submitting the applications. But yeah, to have it all detailed on a site plan review, I'm in total agreement. And then we can also send the MEP plans.
I can tell you just by looking at your existing plan, I am not crazy about that snow storage up against Colburn.
Yeah.
I would like to see that moved.
Yeah, we kind of touched on that. I thought that we were going to push that a little bit somewhere in that,
Hold on, which
Commercial
street?
space, but-
I'm sorry.
If you look at the 3 of 5 sheet, there's snow storage up against the drive and up against their sidewalk and the public sidewalk. It just,
You mean Colebrook? You said Colebrook.
Colebrook, yeah.
Colebrook,
What did
okay.
I say?
said Colebrook.
Colburn.
So I was looking, going, wait a minute,
Sorry.
okay.
No offense to anybody who lives there. I just think that snow storage you've got plenty of places to put it.
yeah, okay. We actually just talked about that, so I think it's just when we made some of the modifications for the banked parking and some of the fencing that was required, then we didn't place enough on our property. So I think that we have plenty of room to do it, and I think that's a solid suggestion.
So Mr. Barrett, you're talking about bringing back to the board, so what exactly are you looking to get accomplished tonight?
I mean, I guess I thought that we were somewhat close. I thought that we might have had some gaps in that exterior materials. I questioned that as of last week, but from the sketch plan to now. So, I mean, I guess outside of the material selection that would be compliant with SHPO, because they're going to kind of oversee all of this, without any variances, I just wondered if there's any other reasons that you would see not to approve the plan outside of material selection, snow storage, and then our MEP plan, so you understand decibel.
I'll leave it to the board, but normally we like to see a complete package if we're going to
Okay.
grant final approval. And I think we're close, but I don't know how the rest of the board feels. We'd have to do a lot of conditions right
I do
now.
think there needs to be some landscaping out front.
I'm not opposed to that at all.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about putting some shrubbery up there or something. No, there isn't tons of space because there's hardscaping up there.
Yeah,
But it just might soften it a little bit.
I'm not opposed to that at all.
Yeah,
I think that's a good thing, especially if it
with you on
makes the
that.
neighborhood look better.
I think at least show what's there. Looking at the street view here, there's a couple trees on either side of the stairs that, don't show up on here.
Right.
You got 2 really nice big street trees out there. Provide some nice shade in the front. So adding some of those to the plan just so we could see it.
Yeah, if you're keeping anything that's there, you should have it on your
Yeah, it
landscaping
really
plan.
should be on the plan, on the existing and also on the proposed.
Yeah. Make sure they don't disappear.
Yeah,
Right, because right now you could cut them down. If I approved it the way it is, I wouldn't know.
okay. That's fine. So we have the MEP plan, so we'll ensure they're in a complete package. We'll put an exterior materials package together for everything new that's going on in the building. We'll identify some paint colors for the existing doors and windows that we intend to repurpose, which is going to be fairly straightforward. We can add landscaping in the front. We're going to have snow storage on our own property and a place that makes sense. and showing the existing landscape. So those are kind of the main areas that we're planning to focus
The
on.
one last thing I'm going to suggest, sorry, Bernie, is lighting plan needs to be on here with the photometrics. And even if you're using what currently is there, I want to know that
Okay.
photometrics on it.
I know that we have a little bit in the back, and then we're utilizing some pedestal lights that were along the side, but I can do a better job at identifying that.
Now, will you be any closer to having the maintenance agreement for the hallway in place?
So what I was told, since we're still under contract to acquire the property, is that, and actually I see the father is here tonight, but maybe he was waiting for us to get an approval prior to finalizing that. So, I mean, I can provide it in concept, I can provide it in draft, but he said that, and I can understand his position because it's legal dollars that has to go to review that, and he wants to ensure that we're going to be in a position to close and that the lawsuit was settled. So those were his factors on doing it, on
It's
waiting.
legal. I think I'm okay, but could you
Yeah,
have a
I am
letter?
okay as long as it's there in concept, and I probably would put a condition on it that we don't get signatures on the block until we have everything filed.
That's kind of what our thought process are. We do have the access, we have some of it outlined in the contract, like the breezeway use and the access between the two parties. The shared parking we would need to add. Now that we removed the garage, we don't need the egress to the other sides theoretically. So it's a smaller list, but there still is some areas of maintenance that need to get addressed. We have the gas line separation in our contracts and that's been signed and agreed to. So extracting the things that are in the contract and then adding the 2 or 3 other things, the breezeway maintenance, and then the shared parking for commercial on Monday through Saturday,
Yeah.
or Monday through Friday.
So if they provided a letter that the church agrees that they're going to work on those things, would that be acceptable to propose, or does it mean, I'm asking legal, sorry.
That's acceptable.
That's acceptable? Okay.
Yes.
So maybe you could tell them how to structure that, just so.
Probably
We'd
not.
probably have a signed letter of intent with something like that.
Yep, something that we can just have on record. That would be
Okay.
good.
Thank you. Okay, so right now I understand you're basically going to table this then until you have all that to come back with.
Yeah, I'm not uncomfortable with that. I think this can be, as long as we can have the time to deliver it by the next planning board meeting, I'm not uncomfortable with that at all.
I just don't know if there's more input from the board.
The only thought is, so the applicant's looking for a subdivision and site plan approval. I mean, as far as the subdivision is out, the only thing that I think that we have up in the air are the cross-access agreement and the maintenance plan, which could be conditions. We could,
I think it's a secret problem if we divide this between the site plan and, because we know that they're both happening together. This isn't like I'm subdividing it and 18 years from now you're coming to me and you want to build a
Yeah.
yacht club.
okay,
I'm
so you think
comfortable
there's a
with-
segmentation issue
I think
there?
it makes sense to wait.
I was
not
thinking the
uncomfortable
same
with
thing,
that.
Brad, but one of the reasons he was going to come just for subdivision at one point, we
And
said-
then we tried to,
we said
yeah,
better to do it
okay.
all.
Right, and that was actually our mistake, that we wanted both at that time too, but we didn't fill out the paperwork properly, so that's
It'd
on
probably
me.
be cleaner if you do it.
Yeah, I'm not in
It'll be
disagreement with
cleaner
that.
for you.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Because a lot of things that happen after the subdivision and approval of this, then we start scheduling our closing, we start, triggering things in the contract, things like that, so.
So is there any other questions from,
This is still a public hearing though, right?
yeah, but I want to get to Labella comments too, so.
Mine was about a Labella comment
So,
about the code review.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, if there was no more questions from the board, could you go over your comments, make sure the applicants
I've got
understand?
2 more
Oh,
quick little items.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just a little bit more detail on the shared space out here.
Sure.
Whether it's like couches or picnic tables.
Yep. I think a more robust landscaping plan across the board. We tried to do it with our architect to save money because we were still thinking this thing the court might not have decided. It was a lot of, let's do as much as we can without, while we're waiting for decisions. And then once they made the decision, I feel more confident in expending that amount of capital to go through with this. But I think a more robust landscaping plan makes a lot of sense.
And then I think also another detail on that, the black aluminum fence. You've got it called out here, but I don't really see a actual detail in the
Yeah, we didn't
What
put a
actually-
detail in the same way we did on the east side fence to obscure the 6-footer on the east side and the Colebrook access, so
Those are my only two things.
Thank you.
I think
Any
those
more?
are good points.
When you go over your comments, could you spend a little bit of time on why this is an unlisted action? I just want
Sure.
to make sure I understand.
Yeah. I'll just add, because the applicant had written a long list, and there's a couple things, small things that I want to just make sure if the board wants them or not, they're included. So, Alan, would you like the decibel reading for the HVAC to be included in the resubmission?
Yeah,
We have that, yep.
he's
Okay.
got it. I mean, it's probably in one of those packets that,
Okay. And then also clarify the notes on the site plan regarding the former lift for clarity.
Okay, that's a good point.
Good point.
And then another thing that was discussed, but I didn't hear through your list, was showing all existing vegetation on the site plan.
Yep, existing landscaping. Landscape, additional landscaping in front, all exterior materials show existing landscaping, so I do have a note for that.
and then I think you asked for the east side landscaping, right?
All landscaping.
Yeah.
I think we could put that on the site plan, or I think by next time we might have like an actual landscaping plan that has a little bit more detail rather than trying to slot it all on the site
Yeah.
plan. Architect adding one thing and
Right,
then
you'll
engineer trying to pick it up.
See, a lighting plan, we'll see.
It just gets confusing. Oh, lighting plan as well, yeah.
One more confirmation, I forgot to ask. You're not planning on any signage either, correct?
Not at this time. I mean, if there's a commercial, once we identify a commercial tenant, I would like them to come back. You know, I would imagine that they're gonna have to come back for their plan anyway. I don't know that they can go right into, you know, having a building permit. So I'm not sure of the process. I'm mostly focused on residential, but if they come back and it's a daycare, are they coming back to the planning board to get their plan approved, or only if there's site plan changes associated with it?
They wouldn't come back to us for the interior stuff. That would
No.
that would be done ministerially.
You do
But
do a
if they want a
sign.
sign, that's
Yeah.
gonna-
And it would come back.
Okay.
Unless there's an existing sign that you didn't point out that we missed.
Not that I'm aware of, but maybe there is now. No, I don't think there is an existing sign on
Okay, I
the,
don't
on the
think so.
property. We just put the temporary one up for the planning board though, but that doesn't count, right?
No, that doesn't count. Okay. All right, so Kate, do you mind jumping into your,
Sure.
thank you.
I sent out a letter today that Michelle emailed to you all. I believe it's part of your packet. So first is seeker. I have as unlisted. It's not explicitly listed on type 1 or type 2, therefore it is categorized as unlisted. So the seeker process is not complete yet. The board needs to go through and make a determination. Item 2, required lot dimension. This is applicable mostly to the subdivision, just to ensure that the new parcel that's being created is code compliant, and it is code compliant in terms of dimensions. Next, I have code review. I would suggest that a town code enforcement officer do a code review of this site. It gets a little bit complicated because we are in an R1, so obviously things like lot coverage is a lot different than in a higher density area. One that at least sticks out to me is side yard setback, and the breezeway is right on the property line, so to me it doesn't meet the side yard setback, but that's not necessarily my place to determine that or not. That is up to a certified code enforcement officer that are employed here. And so that was just what was going through my mind, as well as the parking requirement. So going through the code and having a CEO determine whether it meets the requirements or not.
Can I just ask a quick question on that? What do we do about the commercial space then?
In what way? Oh, because you don't know what's going in there, you're saying?
He could put a restaurant in there, or
Well, here's the thing.
probably not a bar, though.
Whatever's going to go in there,
Alcohol, it's part of the deed for buying a church property, that there's certain things that can never go into their spaces.
No, it would be the 300-foot rule.
Yeah.
So when a commercial business or whatever wants to go in there, they're going to have to come and get a C of O, a certificate of occupancy, and then when they review that, they say, okay, is this code compliant? Is the use allowable here? And then one of the other things that you usually check is parking,
Yeah.
right? Because if you're changing from, I don't know, an office where one person works to maybe like a hair salon where people are coming every hour, that might have different parking requirements. I can't remember off the top of my head, but
Is there, I guess I'm asking this question, is there a way for the applicant to at least soothe that experience over at this point? So if he knows that he's getting a child care in there, can he ask that question beforehand so it can be checked ministerially, so he's not having to,
sure, I mean, he can,
it's gonna make it
I
easier
think
for
we
him to
base it off
sell.
of square footage, so Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, on the commercial side, the requirement is based on the square footage of the commercial leasable space.
Right.
Is that right? So I think it's, I mean, I don't know, obviously there's more dense uses of that commercial space, but I still think there's gonna be a maximum occupancy based on the number of square feet. I even saw one of the signs that were in there today, maximum occupancy of the front area, 56 people. It was like 2,500 square feet. So, you know, I think that that's gonna be dictated by the size versus, yes, there
I'm
could
just
be denser
inquiring
uses,
about the
but.
parking.
Yeah, well, I'm saying the parking requirement is based on the amount of commercial square footage. So we've laid out our parking request to accommodate the square footage requirement of the 6,000 square feet of commercial space.
Okay.
So we've done our best. I mean, if there is some obscure use that says it's going to be a concert venue or, you know, something like that, then it's something that is outside of, you know, the common uses that we would anticipate for the site. So we did our best based on the square footage tables in the code and have lined up our parking to accommodate it.
okay. Next, sort of, we talked about this, but having all agreements in place, so that including shared access, because obviously people who are going to be residing in these apartments are going to be crossing over the church property and boundary, so making sure that there's an agreement for that, as well as a maintenance agreement in place before signature. Monroe County, so Monroe County provided comments for the applicant's subdivision application, and I'm unsure whether that's something Michelle does or the applicant does. Different municipalities do it differently, so either the applicant or Michelle, whoever submitted it previously, just confirming whether the planning board has received the site plan, because obviously they reviewed the previous submission as a subdivision. They didn't review it as a site plan, so just ensuring that
So we still need that to come.
potentially, I don't know if it's been submitted or not, so.
Okay.
Obviously, signage, I believe that the applicant had indicated that they do not intend to include any signage, but obviously in the future, for some reason, maybe it's for the commercial business that's going to go in there, but any signage returned to the board for a review, and then just ensuring that signature blocks are on all pages of the site plan.
I apologize. Could you go over the unlisted action part again? You went kind
Sure.
of quick there, so.
Sure, so
Because we don't have to rule if it's unlisted, right? It's just
you have to make a determination. If it's a type 1 or unlisted, you have to make a determination.
negative too, or
Pardon?
do we have to make a positive or negative
Yes.
with that too? So what are you recommending this would be? Unlisted,
I mean,
I'm just asked based on the criteria.
based on the criteria, it's an unlisted action.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that we're a little premature on this until we see the entire site plan anyway.
I agree, but I just wanted to understand why you were looking at it as unlisted.
Sure, so, okay, so New York State, like, codes and regulations, they list out, they have like a very specific list of what type 1 actions are and type 2 actions are. And so if you go through, like, type 2, you'll see that, sure, you can construct, like, you can expand a structure that is less than 4,000 square feet, but it has to be non-residential. Or you can, expand a minor accessory residential structure, but it has to be like a swimming pool or a tennis court. So it's very specific. Honestly, in most cases, if you went with unlisted, you'd probably be safe because they are so specific. But I can share the type 1 and type 2 lists with you all if you want to kind of go
I'm good.
through.
I just want
Okay.
to know how you came to that conclusion.
Sure,
That's all.
yeah.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Any questions for Labella?
I read the report that came out there. I think we agree with the majority of that, and, I think it's a nice list to contemplate. But I do think that, we'll add some of the landscaping and exterior materials plans to this, get you the decibels level, and we had so many different meetings that we submitted sections of it, but I think the complete package would be better for you guys. So I'm thinking that we'll have enough time to be able to get it prior to, so I don't know, do you have a time period? Can we have a couple weeks, or?
July.
Well, July would be the next workshop, if you want to come before the workshop to get any other input. And then
Yeah.
it could be at the July meeting. I don't know the dates off the top of my head.
After July 4th,
Definitely after July 4th.
and then at the end of the July for the actual meeting?
The workshop is, hold on.
I'm just wondering the latest that we might be able to submit changes for to still make the July meeting.
So the workshop is scheduled for July 8th,
Yeah.
and the hearing is scheduled for July 22nd. And so ultimately, it's up to the town staff. So I would contact Michelle
Okay.
because she's the one who puts together the agenda, and so she knows how much time she needs in order to do like public notification, get it to the newspaper, all those things. So I would contact her to see sort
Yeah.
of.
Well,
Yeah.
we're definitely planning on being there in July. I'm just wondering if by July 8th we can build on this at all, which I think we can a little bit, but I think it'd be like tightened up with, similar that we had the sketch plan and then we submitted the plans like a week or so before the 22nd, so.
Workshops for your use, if you want to come back and get any more input. It's not mandatory. It's good to come.
Yeah.
Okay, if you want
But
to
I
show
think
us
it was
where you're
helpful
at.
last time, especially if we're gonna present new information, that we may have we may have the
And you may
ability
get
to.
different information from the folks that are here today, that they're looking for something that you said, oh, wow, I didn't think of that.
Yeah, 100%. So I valued that a lot last time. And I valued the ability to modify the plans prior to this meeting, which we did, so.
But Michelle should be able to help you with the timeline stuff.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay, with that, I'm going to ask you to take a seat. And did you want to, or I'm going to open up the public hearing, unless you have any other presentation.
No, that's all
Okay.
for now.
I'll open up the public meeting. Anybody who would like to speak to this, please state your name and address, and please keep it within 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Jacob Zoglin. I'm an attorney and partner at the Zoglin Group here in Rochester. And I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of Denise Flanagan in opposition to 43 North Real Estate site plan and subdivision applications. It's clear from the application, the town code, and state law that the applicant has not met its burden of proof, and so its application should be denied. First, the project undeniably creates non-conforming conditions, and so the application must be denied on that basis alone. Town Code Section 204-7C prohibits the town from approving any application unless it conforms to the zoning codes. Courts have similarly held that where the applicant submits a subdivision layout containing lots that do not conform to requirements of the zoning ordinance, the approval must be annulled. Here, it's undeniable that the project envisioned by this application would create and exacerbate non-conforming property conditions. I'll just go over a couple, but I did submit a letter. I'm not sure if it's reached your desk yet, but it was submitted before the meeting that goes over these items. The first is Town Code 235-11C. It requires side setbacks between buildings that are equal to 10% of the width of the lot with a 5-foot minimum. But here, as was already raised actually by the board, the application would render lots 1 and 2 non-conforming because the buildings on those lots appear to be connected, and therefore they have no side setback at all. The subdivision of an existing lot will therefore create 2 new lots with a 0-foot side setback in violation of the town code. They did not receive a variance for this. Second, Town Code Section 235-78A1 mandates that required off-street parking be provided on the same lot as the building or use served. But this application seeks to spread out about 20 required off-street parking spaces between 2 parcels, what they call parcel 1 and 2, rather than siting them all entirely on the lots they serve. This would render the properties, again, non-conforming, and so this application must be denied. Third, Town Code Section 235-77B provides that vehicle parking or storage space maintained in connection with an existing and continuing principal building, structure, or land use, right, that's the church here, shall be continued and may not be counted as serving a new building, structure, addition, or land use. But this project seeks to do exactly what is prohibited by the code. It seeks to count current church parking spaces to satisfy the minimum off-street parking spaces required for the project, thereby reducing the number of off-street parking spaces currently existing and exclusively serving the church. Again, town code violation, without a variance. Town Code 235-79 requires that, and this is one that I know is on your radar, it requires churches provide at least 1 off-street parking space for every 3 seats occupied at maximum capacity. It's not based on some measurement of a history of, who was there. It's about maximum capacity. And here, the applicant admits that the church's maximum capacity is at least 1,000 seats. I believe it submitted one version of the site plan that actually stated that directly on it. And in the letter that we provided to the planning board, we provide independent, verifiable, online evidence, which has been made part of the record, showing that the capacity at maximum is, the maximum capacity is 1,000. Fifth, Town Code Section 235-77H requires that driveways and passageways for parking spaces located in an R1 residential district have at least a 2-foot minimum setback from the adjoining lot lines. But here, the driveways for the parking spaces at the property have no setback between the proposed lot lines because the driveway clearly directly connects the 2 proposed parcels. Again, instead of a 2-foot setback, there's 0. So based on this, the application would cause the project to create non-conforming conditions and would require additional approvals, including multiple approvals from the ZBA that were never even sought when they were there before. Additionally, and this kind of got brought up a little bit, the planning board must comply with seeker. And that, in this case, requires preparation of an environmental impact statement, before taking any action on the application.
That's time.
Can I wrap it up with just one minute?
Yes, last point.
Thank you. Yeah, it's less than a minute left. So in addition to the conflict with the zoning code that I already raised, the project also is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. I won't go into it. It's in the letter that I provided. And it will cause significant adverse environmental impacts. Again, I won't get into them. They're in the letter. Significant adverse impacts will affect traffic, parking, substantial change in the use or intensity of the property. And because of this goes directly to one of the board members had asked about this project. Yes, it is an unlisted action, and yes, it should receive a positive declaration of an environmental significance under seeker. And that was what will trigger the EIS requirement. Failure to do so would be a seeker violation. So in conclusion, the application cannot be granted because the project doesn't conform to the zoning code, would negatively impact the surrounding area, and because seeker hasn't been complied with, and frankly, it couldn't be complied with on this project. So for these reasons, we ask that the application be denied. I have submitted a letter that goes over all these issues in more detail. I'd be happy to address them if there are questions. Thank you for the board's attention this evening. And I appreciate the courtesies.
Thank you. Next person, please. You can line up if there's more people want to talk.
Kim DiProgetto, 4559 St. Paul Boulevard. I'm here this evening and I'm hearing something different than I've heard before, and I don't think any of my neighbors are aware of this. It's been talked about 2 to 3 bedroom apartments, which was different than original. They were stated, I thought, 1 bedroom luxury apartments. First it was 12 to 14, then it went to 22, now 20. And we're talking about 2 to 3 bedroom luxury apartments. I'm like, you have 2 people working, where's all these cars going? I live right across the street, so do my neighbors. There's not even a sidewalk on our side, on the other side. Where are we gonna come and go? My grandkids go to school, I just don't understand how this can even happen in this neighborhood. When St. Cecilia's and down in Durand went in, you have the expressway there, you have commercial there, you have very busy corridors. You're gonna impact this for the negativity of all of us. And I have to say, I don't even think any of my neighbors are aware of this 2 to 3 bedroom. Now you're talking about, and then all the air conditioning on the top, just like the people had to listen to back over here off of Hudson when the store went up. How can you say that's not going to impact the rest of us that live right on top of St. Thomas? You guys don't live there, and I know you don't understand, and it's been a concern for all of us. You're talking about changing everything in that neighborhood, and this will greatly change it. You're not going to be able to ever bring it back. You're not going to be able to give people back and not to even go ahead. Farrell Terrace isn't aware of this. I can tell you the people in the private drive, I don't know how many of them are aware of this, but tonight to hear that that's what he's designating. My son paid $2,300 in Webster for a 2-bedroom, and there were parking issues there, and he finally left. And 3 and 4 bedrooms were even more money. So if there's luxury and you're talking 2 to 3 bedroom apartments, this is totally a different concept than what was first brought before the residents. To my knowledge, I have never heard that before, and I've been at every meeting. I'm just really appalled by people sitting and worry about what the outside looks like. I'm more concerned with the congestion and the traffic that goes down St. Paul Boulevard. Nobody's ever over there to see the speeding in the summer, the motorcycles. So you're talking about adding one more level of something that neighborhood can never change again. It is a gorgeous neighborhood, and I know you don't live in it, but I hate to see this happen to it. I really do, and I know they don't live there, and it makes me ill to think about it.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sebastian Meadows. I don't live near St. Thomas, but I've recently started going. I'm new to Catholicism, and I'm also a new dad. And I know 2 other couples that are new parents and also new to Catholicism. When I heard the bit about the 2023 data for attendance, I wondered if there was any kind of long stretch study for that data, because I've only seen more and more people rapidly coming to Catholicism, especially the traditional Latin Mass. And my main concern is the parking, especially because God willing, I will need a Ford Transit over the next decade for all the kids I plan to have. And I know that my friends are in the same boat. When I initially came to the traditional Latin Mass in the early spring, parking was not fun, but you could. You just had to park in the far region. I don't know if you've seen the whole parking lot, but there's a main spot and there's a far end. Had to park in the far end. Then I had my child and there was a lot going on. When I came back to the English Mass, I had to park in the far end. That wasn't how it was the first time that I went to the English Mass. It was a little quieter, but it seems to be getting more traction. And the traditional Latin Mass, we plan to go on Sunday. I'm a bit worried because if I had to park in the far end then, I don't know what's going to happen now. So I just wanted to voice my concern that I think that if we have the apartment complex there and we're using up some of the parking spots, I'm going to have to park in a nearby park or some kind of retail store and just take my kids out hiking to get to church. So I just wanted to voice my concern. Thank you all for listening to me.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dorothy Hayes. I'm 3135 St. Paul Boulevard. Just briefly, my family has been in Arundecoit probably, at least 150 years. My great-grandmother on Thomas Avenue got to choose the number of their property there. My grandfather in the late 1800s was born there. So we've had a very long, committed relationship with Arundecoit. My grandmother's poem, tribute to the soldiers that are from Arundecoit, is in the hallway right there, Linda Lyon Van Voris. So my connection with Arundecoit is deep that way, and also in my connection with St. Thomas the Apostle, where we don't generally go to Mass there, but it is still because of all the tumult, but it's still very dear to my heart, and it's also important for the character of the neighborhood. And I think there are certain practical things here that aren't being addressed properly. First of all is the parking. I think that, if it's not sufficient for a Sunday Mass, let alone for a moderately well-attended funeral, I think you're going to have problems with that. The zoning issues are a concern to me. These are things, these laws and codes were established for the protection of the community and their character. And I really think that those need to be, that's not just an aside. That's something that should be really well looked at. And also my concern here tonight is, you have these, first time I'm hearing these luxury apartments with a daycare on the first floor. To me, when we consider retiring and moving somewhere, I don't think if I was looking for a luxury apartment, I'd be looking for one that has a daycare on the floor below that. And again, parking issues. Luxury apartments, I'm going to want my parking, right? I'm not going to want to have to share it. I want to want that. But then there's also some more subjective issues with this, which I don't necessarily think are less important. And one of those is the permanent change of the character of the neighborhoods. This is something, you look at the fiasco with like I Square, all that stuff happening. I don't see this as being viable once as a project financially, but also as part of the character of the neighborhood. And my frustration with that comes from, it almost looks like a planned neglect, right? This building was neglected over the years that it was there. It could have been maintained. It could have been used. I've heard that there have been another school that expressed interest in being there. Why that wasn't followed up on is a big concern for me. And the underutilization of the property by the diocese and the parish. That's a great property. Churches, you have that all there. So I really think that this is, I'm concerned how this is all set up, how it's playing out, to the detriment of the people that go to church there and the people that live in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rory Zimmer, 208 Albemarle Street in the city. I'm a parishioner at St. Thomas the Apostle, St. Catherine Tekakwitha, and I was asked to speak about parking counts based on my experience working as an architect for the past 20 years. The proposed restriping plan of Lot 1 spaces that are used by the church amounts to about 173 spaces, which, if using the 1-to-3 ratio of parking spaces to building occupants for churches, can accommodate an occupant load of 519. However, the codes are not based on actual occupancy, but are calculated to what the maximum allowable occupancy of the building are. So per the 2021 International Building Code, section 1004.4, The maximum occupancy load is approximately 900, let's say, and would require 300 parking spaces. I reiterate that the code is based on maximum occupancy rather than actual occupancy, and we do have events which reach this maximum occupancy. The current number of parking spaces is 255, and in the proposed plan, as I said, it's down to 173. There is allowance in the code for existing non-conforming conditions to pertain, but to make the future condition less compliant than the current, but it does not allow to make the future condition less compliant than the current. In conclusion, Lot 2, which would be used by the tenants at the apartments, can achieve the numbers required for their occupancy, but does so by making Lot 1, church parking, less compliant than it already is. And the maximum occupancies of the church and apartments taken together do not provide enough parking for both to exist and use simultaneously. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Eugene Michael, 181 Daly Boulevard. I have a number of items. I'm just going to read down my list. St. Thomas the Apostle has seating for 1,000 people. This number is derived from the Diocese of Rochester's website, sheet 1 of the proposal, and my measurements yesterday that I took in the church, I come up with 1,002 seats, and this is all under the code. Sheet 3 of the 43 North proposal contradicts itself as it states there are only 250 seats in the church. Sheet 1 of the proposal acknowledges that there are 1,000 seats in the church, so you've got a discrepancy in that plan. Sheet 3 of the 43 North proposal goes on to make the claim that the proposed church parking lot, Lot 1, will be in compliance with the town code governing parking 235-79. This code states that there must be one parking space for every 3 seats occupied at maximum capacity. The church has 1,000 seats, which means it requires 333 parking spaces. 43 North claims the parking spaces number is derived from average mass attendance. This is simply not true. The required number of parking spaces, according to code, is derived from the number of seats in the building. Mass attendance varies from week to week. It is not uncommon for a funeral or a wedding to have attendance far in excess of week-to-week averages. The parking capacity, according to the town code, must allow for these potentials. The proposal states that the church will be left with 166 parking spaces. This is not entirely accurate. 4 of the spaces are inside the parish center garage, which is being used for storage. Another 19 spaces are listed as cross-lot, which is shared. This further reduces the number of exclusive church parking spaces to 143. There were 153 cars there yesterday for the 11:15 Mass, so it wouldn't have worked yesterday. By whose authority is 43 North designating banked parking on the church's property? Lot 1. Had they been given legal discretion over the use of the church's land? Is there a legally binding agreement in place that permits them to project additional parking on the church's property? If so, at whose expense would this parking be installed? If the banked parking along the main driveway is authentic, then has anyone considered the significant destruction of green space and mature trees that would be necessitated by this project? Has anyone considered the safety hazard of forcing cars in these spaces to back out into oncoming traffic of the main driveway? Has anyone considered that this area is a play area for many of our children at the conclusion of Mass? Is there going to be an easement through 43 North's proposed parking lot so that our children and parishioners will be able to safely walk between the church and parish center? Otherwise, they will be forced to walk in the traffic on the main driveway. We have over 80 children who attend our Sunday school in the parish center from September to June. Mass attendance at St. Thomas has been growing by about 7% a year since 2018. If this trend continues, then we would need an additional 10 parking spaces or so every year. This is why parking, as the code states, must be based on the maximum capacity of the building. Yes, our current parking situation is non-conforming with the current code. However, the church and parking lot was constructed in the 1960s when the standards were different. Is there a written and legally binding agreement that allows 43 North to dump snow from their lot on our property? This could further reduce available parking during the winter months. What if a future pastor decides to prohibit this practice? Would 43 North then have to haul their snow out by dump truck? If this plan proceeds, the town of Arundecoit will be on record as approving a subdivision that will result in a church with a capacity of 1,000 and having parking of only 143 exclusive spaces, when 333 are required by current standards. If at some point the church were to be closed and put on the market, then it's very possible that a use variance would be required again, because not many church groups would be interested in such a large church with so little parking. This proposal, as written, could very easily result in a domino effect that could greatly alter the character of this quiet residential neighborhood. And I'll submit this letter.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Eugene Michael.
Thank you.
I do have a quick question. Was anybody on the board aware before
We
tonight?
can't converse back and forth. You can ask the question, but we can't answer it if you want to ask it. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Ginny Maurer, and I live at 203 Pinecrest Drive, which is the very first street off St. Paul Boulevard, right by the school. And like Dorothy Hayes, I'm a multi-generational West Arundecoiter over 100 years, and I'm proud to say my daughter and grandchildren are being raised in West Arundecoit. This is my neighborhood. It is a beautiful residential neighborhood. You should all drive through it. It's residential, it's got schools, it's got sidewalks, and I hope your job as the planning board, setting the character for Arundecoit, would be to preserve our residential neighborhoods and basically set the tone. This will change the character of the neighborhood. There's no doubt about it. You're putting 6,000 commercial space in it, and you're putting residential housing. Do you need the residential housing? This board's gonna got proposals for Titus Avenue, for farther down St. Paul Boulevard. Yeah, they're all in commercial districts. They're not in R1. This sits in the middle of an R1. I know Joel's a nice guy and comes up here and throws you his plans, and he'll tell you he met with the neighbors. But you've seen how many times those plans have changed. The neighbors never saw that. They never saw the third floor. We never saw the garages. We never saw that they were going to make a deal with the church and take away the green space by St. Paul Boulevard, which is Arundecoit's crown jewel, by the way. We didn't hear that they were going to take the driveway down and put a 2-lane highway in. Yeah, am I concerned about the commercial space? Yeah. Is there going to be delivery trucks? I don't know. But I know it will change. Joel's a nice guy. He grew up in Arundecoit, not raising his kids here. He's raising his family, and I think it's Brighton. And Father Gagno, great priest. Go to Mass on Sunday. But he's only at St. Cattery because he's been appointed there. Next year, he could be in Chili or Webster. The neighbors got together and together pulled enough money to file a lawsuit to prevent this. That's a pretty strong argument to say, we don't want our beautiful neighborhood to change. I don't want you to deny this because of parking, but I don't want you to approve it just because it's an old building that no one has anything else to do with. Joel's right. The neighborhood is changing. There are young families moving in. People like me are retiring. So maybe we'll need more schools. But we don't need more development. Not in the middle of this. He's right. This building has existed for 100 years. And what you decide at the planning board will last 100 years. Preserve our residential neighborhoods. Preserve our jewel, St. Paul Boulevard. And please say no.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, don't be shy.
I just had knee surgery, so it'll
Take your time.
Dear Planning Board, I started a search for a forever home for myself after my children got out of high school.
Excuse me. Sorry.
Linda Wilson.
Thank you.
98 Harvington Drive. Sorry.
What is it? I'm sorry. I didn't hear your name. Yeah,
Linda Wilson and 98 Harvington.
thank you.
Sure. I lived for 30 years in Brighton. my children graduated from Brighton High School, and I knew that they would be getting married and have children, and I needed a bigger home because I raised them in a 1,000 square foot home. And I looked on Park Avenue, I looked in the Highland Avenue area, South Wedge, and then I finally found the dream home in West Arundecoit. I'd never had any, I did have an aunt and uncle that grew up, raised their children off of Cooper Road. But I found my dream home in the Maywood neighborhood, which is also where the St. Thomas School and St. Thomas Church is. I have loved it here. It is amazing, and 2 years after my daughter got out of college, she also bought a house 2 blocks from me. So I have my 2 beautiful grandchildren that are able to walk to their Mimi's house. In fact, I get phone calls daily that they forgot to bring something to school, and I'm able to run down and get it for them and take it over to the school, as I did today with my bad knee. I really don't want to see the charm of this neighborhood, and it will change. When I first moved here, I saw the rectory on Washington Avenue, and I thought it was apartment building. And I said, but I did some research and found out it wasn't, because I didn't want to live near any apartment buildings, because I had done that in Brighton. And it was congested, the traffic, the safety of the children walking and riding their bikes were of a concern to me. But since living in Maywood and on Harvington, our street is so amazing. We gather monthly to have parties, and we're a very close-knit neighborhood. And at Christmas time, we have a Santa that comes around, and we drop off presents at houses so that they can all see Santa and sing carols. And it's just, it will change forever the character of this charming, charming neighborhood. And I really beg you to rethink this whole project over. It was a school when I moved in here. Stepping Stones occupied the building, and I would love to see that happen again. And I thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Christine Vargas. I live in Webster. I am a IHS graduate. I attend Mass at St. Thomas. I volunteer in Arundecoit, and I'm here in the town many times a week. There's a couple points I wanted to share with the planning board tonight, because I'm not sure what you have heard about the larger story. I think the first one that's most important, though, is that there is a school and that has expressed interest in purchasing this property. This school is currently in East Rochester, busting at the seams, and they're currently looking for another location. And they are a Catholic school, and there is a lot in common with the Latin Mass community that's at Arundecoit. I know at one point the developer had mentioned that they took them through to see if it would be financially feasible, and the school turned them down. But honestly, when you're being asked to pay $540,000 a year in rent, pay $2 million of the $4 million in renovation work that was estimated, the developer's return on investment less than 5 years, that is not a realistic offer. Nonprofit schools tend to own their facilities because they can get control of their costs. And so it would be much more feasible for a school to be successful purchasing their own property. If there is continued growth, and we have had much growth at the Latin Mass community, 7% was mentioned. I was advised it as much as 9%. St. John Bosco School is growing approximately 10% a year. These are success stories, and they really want to come to Arundecoit, and they really want to continue. People were sad when Stepping Stones left. It was a huge asset to the community. Schools are important to any community, and there's people from Arundecoit that make the hike to East Rochester so their children can go to school there. So this would be a huge boom for Arundecoit. But secondly, there's a larger concern that this plan to take over this school and turn it into apartments is really just phase one of a much larger plan, and that you could be looking at apartments across the entire property through a series of dominoes of acquisition. So I really think you're looking at Do you want all apartments on St. Paul, or do you want to maintain the beauty of this property that has amazing green space, and with a school, the building was built for a school, that they would be able to continue in that capacity? I found the comment about a childcare desert to be a little bit concerning. St. John Bosco is now starting children at 3 years old. They'd be able to fulfill that need. Putting children in a basement, I know they're not, daycare's not under SED, but SED is looking for natural light. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I do think there's a lot of things that have not been brought up to the people that have previously come up to talk about this project. I know that there was no discussion about fencing. We don't know, there's a fence, is it a construction fence is gonna come down, but there was other fencing discussed. Outside patio was never discussed. Are there gonna be parties, or there's gonna be other noise? There was no discussion about the third level. There was no discussion about garages. I feel like things keep shifting and changing, and it's very concerning. I really feel that the board really needs to have a thorough understanding of what's being proposed, and know that there's a viable alternative that could be the most successful thing that we've seen since Stepping Stones was there. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good night.
Hi, I'm Denise Flanagan, 698 List Avenue. I actually do have some photos I'm going to submit of parking, recent parking. One thing I'd like to say that in fairness to the public, in reviewing this type of stuff, it would be really important to have a complete, accurate package, which I could tell with the conversation that you guys would appreciate too, because knowing that you got something 5 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago and trying to thumb through and find, it's best to have everything all at once. I'm no expert in looking at those documents or those drawings, but I've been trying really hard, and just, I've gotten submissions from a few weeks ago and before that, and I'm just trying to keep them straight, which one's which, and it's hard to tell in terms of what version I'm looking at. And it's interesting that there's discrepancies between things. Now, I know things change, and that's important, but one glaring thing is that when you look at the drawing, Colebrook Drive is running east and west, and it's also running north and south, and it has listings of neighbors' names and addresses. So, yeah, that's some kind of a mistake, I realize, but you want to have a complete, accurate picture on these diagrams. Let's see, I don't want to reiterate too much more on the parking, but those proposed bank spots on the south lawn, there's snow storage that it's proposed on the other side of that. And as as Mr. Michael said, that the kids like to play on the south lawn after Mass, I can see them being attracted to a big pile of snow and then go tumbling down into these 15 spots where people are coming and going at the change of Mass times. I also noticed that there is a proposed fence running east to west, cutting the north lawn of both Lot 1 and Lot 2. I don't understand why there would be a need for a fence on Lot 1. If there's a need for a fence on Lot 1, or if there's need for banked parking, I don't understand why the owner of Lot 1 isn't proposing these changes. I would think that the site plan for Lot 2 is all about Lot 2, and we shouldn't be seeing changes to Lot 1. Another interesting thing I noticed over the course of charting these different drawings is that the eastern and western boundaries of Lot 2 have changed across various submissions. I've included, and I'll submit it to you, a document which I received from the Diocese of Rochester when I was questioning what does this lot look like, and the diocese sent me back this outlined in green showing what Lot 2 was. So I compared Lot 2 to the most recent submission of the 17th of June, and the eastern boundary has gone more to the east and the western boundary has gone more to the west. I don't really understand how that kind of thing happens, but I think the public has a right to know, the people that go to the church there have a right to know. Back to the parking for one more second. On the site plan of 617, the interesting thing was that the applicant cites the number of required parking spaces for the Lot 2 is based on maximum occupancy, but they don't use the same method for Lot 1. That does not seem fair. And of course, it's against the code. Let's see. Posts on the applicant's Facebook page show that the cross on the top of the, will remain on the top of the school building, but those posts were from well over a year ago. It would be interesting to know if the applicant, should he do this development, if the cross will stay on top of the building, if that's important to the historical nature of the building. In another post, the applicant states, unfounded fears from the Latin Mass group, almost all of which are not from Irondequoit, are that the sale of the school will lead to the sale of the church. While the St. Cateri-Tekakwitha Latin Mass community does draw from outside of Irondequoit, well over 100 registered families are in the 14617 neighborhood of St. Thomas the Apostle. Furthermore, the fears are not unfounded. When St. Cateri-Tekakwitha Parish was originally put together, it comprised what were formerly 5 Catholic churches in Irondequoit. St. Salome, as all of you well know, is now turned entirely into housing. With many new senior housing units on the former St. Cecilia property now surrounding the church, St. Cecilia looks to go the route of St. Salome. With the Diocese of Rochester having undergone bankruptcy and owning many unused or underutilized buildings,
That's time.
It isn't much of a stretch that to think other churches will close.
You can wrap up if you got a.
Oh, yeah, well, my last sentence is breaking up the St. Thomas property puts a target on that being the next potential for closing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, did I cut you off? Thank you. Marie D'Amico, Ramsey, 116 Pinecrest Drive. This is taller than I am. I have to concur with a couple people here that said that submissions were not in accordance with what was verbally presented, and really difficult to piece things together. This, again, today was the first time I've heard of 2 or 3 bedroom apartments. It was always a 1-bedroom apartment and maybe a couple dozen. So that greatly impacts everything that the community has addressed as concerns for the use variance. The impact isn't just related to the number of people residing in the new residential building. It has to do with all of their guests and their families. If they have a birthday party, celebrate Hanukkah, celebrate Father's Day, whatever, where are those people going to park? We don't have shoulders to the road. If people park in the street, and they're going to need to do that, they're going to be blocking a lane of traffic. That really impairs the rest of the traffic on Washington and Colebrook. So that would mean that they would have to park on the grass between the sidewalk and the road. Obviously, that's a concern. They just recently changed the speed limit. I guess it was about 2 years ago, to 25 miles an hour. I live at the corner of Pinecrest and Washington, and they put a speed limit sign of 25 miles an hour outside the front of our house because they were concerned about the children in the school district. If people are parking on the side of the road, actually on the road, it's very difficult to see when you're backing out of your driveway. It's very difficult to see when you're driving on the road if children dart out. So I think it's a really bad safety issue. It's difficult for emergency vehicles to get down those roads. They can't pull over anywhere because there is nowhere to pull over. So the number of people as residents really isn't the number and doesn't reflect the impact on the parking and the vehicle use and all of the activity that's going to be there. The other thing is, I worked for the county for 20 years and saw claims of all kinds. And I saw a lot of sewer backup claims. And living on the street, I've seen a lot of sewer backup cases because it's old infrastructure. It's not ever been replaced completely. It's been patched and repaired, but there's been many people on Washington that have, in that area, that have had sewer backups. And I'm wondering what, and I'm left to wonder because it's not specified in any of the materials that I've seen publicly filed or any of the hearings I've come to, what's the impact on the sewer system and the storm system? A lot of people's storm runoffs goes into the main sewer, which is not legal, but it is, and that causes part of the problem with the backups. So the Department of Environmental Services at the county hasn't been advised or weighed in on this that I know of, and I think we're waiting for the Monroe County Health Department to look into this, according to what I've recently read. But my real concern is every time we're at a hearing, there's something new, like the number of occupants, like a new story being added on, like the number of air conditioning units. We might have the decibels given to us, but what are they in combination with when they're running together? So there's a lot of things that haven't been fleshed out here, and I think in order to have a true notice and opportunity to be heard, which is a due process right of all of the people here in the community, we need those things specified in well advance, very clearly set forth in advance of the hearing, so we can all examine what those factors are. And I think it's our right to have that, and truthfully, it's your right to have that and have time to examine it as well before you make your decision on something that is irrevocably going to change the neighborhood. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I took half a dozen drawings to, or
Name and address. Name and address, please.
Dan O'Connor, 37 Barron's Road. That's about 7 blocks away from the church. I took a half a dozen pictures today along the driveway of the trees that are there. I also submitted tonight a sketch showing where the trees are located. You can look at that. The other pictures I'll email to Michelle tomorrow and she can get them to you. But that shows a place where they plan to put a snow storage. And you tell me how somebody is going to get through those trees with a piece of equipment to store snow in the grass. I don't think it's possible unless you do a lot of trimming on the trees. Bank parking, I get the impression that people think you just designate a piece of land and say park there. There's a lot more to it than that. You have to, at least the details I've seen, you have to dig it up, put a subbase in, and put a layer of a plastic fabric or matting on top of that and then cover it with grass. There's quite a bit of work that has to be done to get them usable. Michelle submitted some pictures not too long ago. In one of those pictures, it shows the school building from the parking lot. I'm amazed that somebody could talk about preserving a building for historical purposes and add a 4th story to it. It just doesn't make sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who would like to speak?
Father Lanscagno, 445 Kings Highway South, and the pastor of St. Cecilia, Christ the King, Margaret Mary's, and St. Thomas the Apostle. Just briefly, I continue to support the project. I think it's very reasonable, very modest, unlike St. Cecilia that was quite a large project. But I think each site fits for its needs. And in terms of the history, if you look back on the multiple meetings that have taken place with multiple developers, I'm hearing the same arguments, pretty much the same. And in terms of parking, it's quite a large lot. I keep pretty close tabs on all of our sites, and I do drive-bys frequently, and I do check things out. I'm quite a hands-on pastor. I don't like letting things deteriorate, and I'm not going to let buildings just fall apart. And so that's the reason I want to press ahead. In terms of parking, I just want to make one observation. I've been through in the wintertime and half the lot is plowed. So if all the parking sites are needed, then why is that?
Not seeing anyone else want to speak? Not seeing anybody else. I'm not going to close the public hearing. I'm leaving it open because we're coming back next week. But would the applicant like to respond to any of the comments?
Just a couple points. I definitely appreciate the enthusiasm of the Latin Mass group. I'd actually love for them to attend a planning board meeting on my side at some point in the future, so maybe on another location, because your energy's awesome. Just regarding our changes in development, we're battling historic compliance requirements, profitability requirements, fluctuating interest rates, changing prices. So the constant changes are really just adapting to market conditions. And then also like responding to the 100 or so, 150 people that have asked to live there. You know, we actually really do take into account what other people say and what they want in the property. So if I hear a good suggestion, I'm not set in stone. If you say, hey, expand the landscaping plan, put some in the front, I look at that and saying it's a good idea because this is a collaborative effort. You know, if they say, hey, we don't want garages on the property, there's no more garages on the property, you know, so I don't want to block your access through there. If they say, hey, there's maintenance agreement, let's think about a reasonable way to plow this driveway. Sure, I'll jump in and help out and do the maintenance agreement. So I'm very reasonable and flexible about it. Also, we were approved for 25 apartments and 5 commercial spaces because I knew that I would need that flexibility. I didn't know what would be required in the lower level space, if it had to be commercial, if it had to remain open as part of National Historic Register and State Historic Preservation Society. Additionally, something that's coming down the pipeline right now, there is active legislation to remove the requirements for church parcels within R1 to create multifamily affordable housing. So that is an active proposal that has been, I'm not sure which legislature it's in, but the current governor is trying to build 100,000 new residential units. That's apartments, single-family homes. I wish we could do it in Irondequoit, but they cost $350 a square foot to build. So to meet this goal, there are going to be changes coming down the pipeline in R1. So the one big change that's in legislature right now is that affordable housing will go into there will be an exemption for church lots in R1 neighborhoods to put in affordable housing. So that is something that's with the legislature right now. I'm not sure how it'll get adopted locally, but our governor is pushing housing units in New York and affordable housing units. So this project, I feel, has the ability to preserve the church for that next 100 years, to be able to not take away their space, to be able to utilize a school, to be able to cure blight, to be able to still do a residentially focused project in a residentially focused neighborhood, to put in a daycare space in, whether or not that you think my tenants will like it. I think it's right by the neighborhood, and I'm avoiding other commercial uses to be able to provide that to our neighborhood. So I'm still thinking about the town of Irondequoit, where I grew up in. And also, I still think it's, the changes to this project or that you've seen or communicated was just, again, figuring out this complex puzzle that is real estate development and being collaborative about it. So those are my points. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, there's no other questions for the applicant. I'm going to make a motion that we table case number PV 2024-05-04 until we receive more information as listed. I normally would list it all. Do you have it all recorded? all the things that he's going to come back?
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
my
I was
question.
taking notes, but Michelle is also going to go through the recording, so we'll have a full list.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that everybody's clear on what we still need.
So you want to go through the list?
I don't necessarily feel, if the applicant and the neighbors feel that we need to, that's fine. I trust that Michelle will take care of this on our end, so I'm not worried about that. I understand the applicant's ability to work with others, but I also know that there comes a point where you just have to say, this is what I'm proposing, so we need to get there.
More of
Because
the
it will
reason we
help.
need the complete package.
Yeah.
So, do I have so we're okay as the list as discussed and recorded?
I was going to ask a question too. So we had the list of items that we identified, like the exterior cladding materials, et cetera, et cetera. There's also these items that are on the list from Labella, specifically the code review. Do we have any timeline on that? I know that the number 3 seems really important.
So I'm usually here every Tuesday morning, so I'll discuss with the Director of Development, Bill Lang, and I'll discuss with him and let him know that it's a priority of the Planning Board. So
Because if we
I'll
got an
hopefully have more
interpretation on
information.
that, I think it would really allow us to focus on some other things. You know, if
Yes,
it's an issue
absolutely.
or if it is not, and then
especially
an
the
determination
parking
from the code
situation.
enforcement officer.
Yeah, I just don't want us to get into creating something that we shouldn't be creating.
right, or get too far down the line or something. Yeah. Okay.
Based on those two conditions, include the list of
I
discussed
do
and
have one more
recorded.
for the applicant.
Labella
Bernie?
list, go ahead.
Yeah, I need to know what's going on with that driveway that's running off of Colebrook, just to make sure that there's no parking on there or anything like that, and what signage, what steps you're going to take to make sure that that does not happen. All right?
Okay. With those 3 conditions, do I have a second?
Second?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And we have 3 absent. Any nay? Sorry. Any abstain? And we have 3 absent. I guess we'll see you in July. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for your comments. We do listen. Thank you.